man is behind bars after he allegedly shot a co-worker at a Memphis, Tennessee FedEx facility after a heated argument. The authorities said that around 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 2nd of November, 31-year-old William Morris shot 24-year-old Jalen Hamilton at a FedEx distribution center at 3,955 Holmes Road. First responders arrived at the scene and found Jalen shot in the stomach, and he was rushed to the local hospital in a critical condition. Security at the facility told police that William was an employee at the facility and had just scanned his worker's ID. Police said the shooting stemmed from an argument after Jalen was upset that William touched his back. According to a witness, William told Jalen not to follow him outside or else he would shoot him. While Jalen was walking to his car in the parking lot, William drove up alongside him and pointed a gun at him before exiting his vehicle and shooting him in the abdomen. On the 7th of November, William was arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder and employment of a firearm during a commission of a felony. He is held at the Shelby County Jail on a $250,000 bond. Jalen's condition has improved since the shooting and is expected to survive. The investigation into the matter continues. 58-year-old Thomas Wallace is behind bars and is accused of murdering his 80-year-old roommate Kenneth Peterson and dismembering his body. On the 1st of November, the authorities were asked to conduct a welfare check on Kenneth after his family said they had not heard from him for about a month. Officers responded to his home in the 4,400 block of 30th Avenue in Phoenix, Arizona, and when they arrived, they smelled a strong foul odor. Once inside, they found 2 large plastic bags inside a bedroom. When they cut them open, they found Kenneth's decomposing and dismembered remains. Officers found blood splattered on the living room ceiling, walls and furniture. There was also traces of blood which appeared to have been cleaned up off the floor. More body parts were found in a laundry basket wrapped in a pile of blankets, and Kenneth's head was found wrapped in linen. Police learned that a woman named Romana Gonzalez lived at Kenneth's home, though she allegedly relapsed on drugs, pawned his possessions, and would take off in his vehicle without his permission. Romana reportedly moved out of the home in February and then returned in March. In April, Thomas also reportedly moved in. During their investigation into the murder, detectives learned Kenneth's truck was missing. They found it on the 3rd of November at a motel Thomas had booked, where Romana was also staying. Both of them were arrested. Romana told investigators that she was not staying at Kenneth's home because of Thomas's behaviour. Police said Romana admitted breaking into Kenneth's home on the 30th of September because she was worried about him and found him dead, but did not contact police. Romana said that Thomas inferred that he had killed Kenneth. On the 28th of October, investigators learnt that Thomas and Romana went out to a pawn shop and tried to sell a chainsaw, hedger, and camera bag. Investigators collected the items they attempted to pawn, and an odour of decomposition emanated from the box when it was opened, and found torn flesh, ligaments, and biological matter on the saw. Thomas is booked into jail and faces multiple charges, including second-degree murder and concealment of a body. Romana faces charges of theft and suspicion of fraud. A minor was kidnapped from Alabama and taken across state lines to Florida, where she was beaten, bound and abandoned under a tree. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office said that a girl met Kobe Jerome Jordan in Houston County, Alabama, on the evening of the 4th of November, and she said she was picked up by Kobe before 2 women joined him. The authorities did not say how old the victim was, other than she was a teenager under the age of 18, and could not elaborate on the circumstances of the girl's meeting with Kobe. It's unclear if the victim knew any of the suspects beforehand, and around 1 a.m. the following morning, the trio took the victim to an abandoned building, where Kobe assaulted her and bound her feet and hands with duct tape, police said. They then moved her and abandoned her under a tree at an unspecified location. A nearby resident spotted the victim tied up and called police at around 6:15 a.m. that morning. Officers arrived to find the girl still bound with her hands behind her back. She was rushed to a local hospital and is expected to survive. Kobe was later arrested and charged with robbery, false imprisonment, tampering with a victim and battery. One of the women, Molly Michelle Jarrett, was arrested and charged with robbery, false imprisonment, tampering with a victim and battery. They are expected to appear in court this week. It's unclear if each suspect will be charged federally. A 68-year-old woman in Vanceboro, North Carolina is behind bars after allegedly causing multiple injuries to 2 children, leaving one child on a ventilator. At around 4 a.m. on the 3rd of November, the authorities responded to Carolina East Medical Center in reference to a child injured as a result of an assault. Investigators identified another child who was abused by the same suspect. The second child didn't require admittance. Both children suffered multiple injuries on their bodies, consistent with being assaulted with different items. A search warrant was applied and executed for 131 Soledad Lane in the Vansboro community of Craven County. Evidence was seized from the residence, and interviews were conducted with victims, witnesses and the suspect. As a result of the investigation, 68-year-old Susan Price was arrested and charged with 2 counts of child abuse. The authorities have not disclosed Susan's relationship to the children. She's held at the Craven County Confinement Facility on a $1 million bond. The child was transferred to the ECU Health in Greensville, where she remains on a ventilator and is listed in a critical condition. The investigation is ongoing, and further charges are expected. The Amarillo, Texas police are investigating a homicide after 2 people were found dead inside a mobile home. At around 12:15 p.m. on the 7th of November, the authorities were called to the Lakeview Mobile Home Park, located at 7865 Canyon Drive, on reports of shots fired. When officers arrived at the scene, they entered the residence and found the bodies of a man and a woman who had been fatally shot. The victims had been identified as 33-year-old Tyler Knight and 29-year-old Bethany Mullican. The authorities said that a juvenile family member was taken into custody as a suspect in the murders. A motive in their case is unclear, as the investigation into the matter continues. On the 8th of November, 39-year-old Christopher Andrighetti of Russellville, Alabama, was arrested after he allegedly beat his 14-year-old daughter. The abuse ceased after the girl ran next door to a neighbour for help covered in injuries. Deputies responded to 100 Town and Country Trailer Court after receiving a report of domestic violence. The authorities said that Christopher became upset after he learned that his daughter had told his mother that he had created a social media account and was possibly having an affair. The girl told police that Christopher began to violently beat her by punching her and hitting her with a shower curtain rod and a piece of wood. She also said she was shoved to the floor and several items were thrown at her, including glass bottles. When the father ordered his daughter to clean up the mess, she went to the kitchen for trash bags, but instead escaped when she noticed the front door was open. When officers went to Christopher's home, they saw broken beer bottles, a smashed up Nintendo Switch, and several blood droplets outside the mobile home's door. When they forced entry into the residence, they found everything in complete disarray. The TV had been destroyed, laptops were crushed and ripped apart, kitchen items were scattered about, and furniture and clothes from the kids' bedroom were thrown around. Officers found Christopher hiding in a bedroom closet, and he was covered in blood from self-inflicted cuts to his arms and waist, and he was taken into custody. Another child also lived at the home, who was found hiding in a closet, but was unharmed. The 14-year-old girl was rushed to a local hospital for her injuries. Christopher's charged with first-degree domestic violence, second-degree domestic violence and child abuse. He's held at the Franklin County Detention Center on a $200,000 bond. A man is behind bars after the bodies of a woman and a newborn were found inside a home. At 8:34 p.m. on Wednesday the 9th of November, the authorities were called to a house on Sawmill Road in Marietta, South Carolina, in response to a 911 call about a missing woman. When officers arrived at the residence, they found 22-year-old Clarissa Winchester deceased along with a newborn son. Upon further investigation, 21-year-old Tyler Wilkins, the father of the newborn baby, was identified as a suspect. Tyler allegedly confined Clarissa inside a relative's home, where he assaulted her, causing blunt force trauma to her head and neck. Her death has been ruled a homicide. Tyler was arrested and charged with child abuse, kidnapping, murder, and child neglect. The child abuse charge stems from Tyler's failure to seek help for the baby after he was born. Tyler has a criminal past, including previous charges of domestic violence of a high and aggravated nature, attempted murder, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He remains held at the Greenville County Detention Center without bond. The investigation into the matter continues. On the 7th of November 2022, 40-year-old Melissa Walk of Conway, Kentucky, was sentenced to 20 years behind bars for the murder of 55-year-old repairman Donald Abner after she admitted to ordering a pit bull to attack him resulting in his death. The pair had been friends for about 20 years, and she'd been staying with her for about 3 months. At around 3 a.m. on the 10th of January 2020, the authorities were called by a neighbour who heard fighting and arrived to find Melissa on top of Donald, beating him as her pit bull bit his head and face. The neighbour told police he heard her tell the dog, "Good boy, get him." State troopers said that when they arrived at the property on Pug Lane, Conway, Kentucky, they were forced to shoot the dog dead. Melissa later broke down in an interview with police while repeatedly saying, "Oh my God, I went redneck on him." Coroners who conducted an autopsy on Donald found that he died at the scene from asphyxiation. He'd also had a broken bone in his neck and bite marks on his face and head. Kentucky State Police Detective Ryan Loudermilk testified in court that a neighbour of Melissa said he heard loud party noises a few hours before the attack. He also said he heard gunshots in the weeks before, but did not know what was being shot. The neighbour said he recorded the attack on his phone, but deleted the video because it made him sick to watch. Officers were unable to recover the footage. Police reported at the time of the attack that Melissa had blood on her hands and feet, and had a large clump of Donald's hair in her hands. Melissa had to be tased to get her off Donald. Trooper Scotty Pennington said the dog had bitten the man several times in the face and head. He said they were left with no option but to shoot the dog, since Melissa refused to tell the dog to back down. He said, "The way I look at it, she used the animal, a pit bull, as a weapon to help her in this altercation. Melissa has a history of alcohol abuse, and she attempted to give it up for some time. She suggested she had a history of blacking out when drinking. When investigators searched the home, they found an empty liquor bottle. Melissa will spend the next 20 years behind bars." 44-year-old Antonio Michael Rushford of Belding, Michigan. He's behind bars following a police chase through Montcalm County, Michigan. At around 12:45 a.m. on Thursday the 10th of November, the authorities saw a green Ford Ranger pickup truck ignore a stop sign at the intersection of Dena Road and Wyman Road in Home Township, Michigan. When police tried to perform a traffic stop, the driver sped away and officers chased after the suspect. During the pursuit, a female passenger texted Central Dispatch. She advised dispatch the identity of the driver and suggested she was not being allowed to leave the vehicle. As the pursuit progressed, the authorities lost sight of the pickup near Stevenson Road and Carson City Road in Bushnell Township. Shortly thereafter, the female passenger sent another text to dispatch stating that the vehicle crashed and the driver fled. Deputies arrived at the crash scene near where the vehicle was last spotted and found the vehicle in the field and the female passenger with minor injuries. The woman, a 37-year-old from Stanton, was treated and released from the scene. Officers found meth inside the vehicle, and after an extensive search, the authorities were unable to locate the driver. After daylight, the authorities received a call of a suspicious man in the area of the crash. The deputies returned to the scene and located the suspect. He was taken into custody without incident. Antonio remains in jail and is charged with possession of intent to deliver and fleeing and eluding the authorities. It was determined that the woman and Antonio were acquaintances, and she willingly got into the vehicle with him prior to him fleeing the police. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office has ruled the shooting deaths of an Arlington, Texas teenager and a mother as a murder-suicide. The authorities said that 51-year-old Jennifer Lee Prescott fatally shot her 15-year-old daughter Mattie Kay Prescott before ending her own life at their home. And just before 5:30 p.m. on the 10th of November, police responded to a report of a possible suicidal subject at a home in the 600 block of East Lynn Creek Drive. Minutes after the call, a fire erupted at the house, and firefighters rushed to the scene to extinguish the blaze. Fire crews entered the home and found Mattie unresponsive with a gunshot wound to her head. She was rushed to a nearby hospital, where she was pronounced dead in the emergency room at 6:27 p.m. As crews continued to search the home, they located Jennifer, who was dead at the scene with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to her head. Layla, who lives next door, was told to vacate her house because of the smoke. She said that she was in shock and the situation is really hard for the neighbourhood. She said Mattie lived in the home with her mother and they were both beautiful people. Mattie had recently won a tournament for a homeschool volley club, and Jennifer was active in the community and seemed like a good mother. She also said she knew the family well, added that Jennifer was a kind, sweet person, but had recently been struggling with depression. On the 9th of November 2022, 29-year-old Taylor Parker was sentenced to death for the 2020 murder of a 21-year-old pregnant woman and unborn child. The attack occurred in the morning of the 9th of October 2020 in the 200 block of Austin Street, New Boston, Texas, and Taylor crushed her friend Regan Hancock's skull with a hammer and stabbed her more than 100 times in her home, including 39 times on her scalp. She then removed a baby from her womb with a scalpel and fled with the infant girl. Regan was 34 weeks pregnant at the time, and she was going to name her baby Braxlyn Sage. It's estimated that the attack took place sometime between 8 and 9 a.m, and she left the house at around 9:15 a.m. Regan's 3-year-old daughter was home during the attack. At around 10:20 a.m. that morning, Regan's mother found her daughter's lifeless body in the living room floor of the house, laying face down in a pool of blood with a scalpel on her neck. Taylor was infertile and had led her boyfriend to believe that she was going to give birth that day with their baby, after pretending for months to be pregnant to stop him from leaving her. Shortly after the attack that same morning, Taylor was pulled over for speeding by a Texas state trooper in DeKalb and found holding an unresponsive newborn in her lap while she was driving. Her baby's umbilical cord was reportedly coming out of Taylor's pants, and she attempted to perform CPR on the child. Taylor and the baby were transported to a hospital, where the infant was later pronounced dead. Medical staff determined that Taylor did not give birth to the child. Taylor could not physically have children due to a tubal ligation and hysterectomy. As part of an elaborate ruse, she bought a fake pregnancy belly online, fake sonograms, and threw a gender reveal party for a baby that didn't exist. During sentencing, Regan's mother told Taylor, "We all know you think it's about you, but it's not. It's about Regan and Braxlyn," she said. Taylor will be transported to death row at the Mountain View Correctional Unit in Gatesville, Texas. A former model charged in the beating death of a California doctor, whose body was found in a car trunk outside Las Vegas, Nevada, has accepted a plea agreement. On the 9th of November, 29-year-old Kelsey Turner entered an alpha plea on a charge of second-degree murder in the 2019 killing of 71-year-old child psychologist Thomas Kirk Burchard. Instead of pleading guilty, Kelsey acknowledged there's enough evidence for a conviction. In exchange, she'll be eligible for parole in 10 years. She could receive anywhere between 10 to 25 years in prison. Her sentencing is scheduled for the 10th of January. Prosecutors say Kelsey, her boyfriend John Kennison, and their roommate Diana Pena were involved in Thomas's death. Diana testified Kelsey was romantically involved with Thomas and was upset by images and messages saved on his phone. Diana said John hit Thomas with a baseball bat. Instead of taking him to the hospital, Kelsey told John to hit him again. Thomas's body and bloody bat were found in Kelsey's abandoned Mercedes-Benz along a desert road near Lake Mead. Investigators later arrested Kelsey at her home. Prosecutors argued that Thomas and Kelsey had been involved in a sugar daddy arrangement before his murder. At the time of his death, Thomas had indicated to Kelsey that he could no longer pay for her expenses, which included her rent, cars and bills. John was sentenced between 18 to 45 years in prison. Diana pleaded guilty in a reduced accessory charge in exchange for testifying. A 9-month-old baby in Central California was killed during a drive-by shooting. At 12:36 p.m. on the 9th of November, the authorities responded to McDonald's at the intersection of 13th and R Streets in Merced, California, on report of a shooting. When officers arrived, they found the 9-month-old victim Darius King Grisby unresponsive and suffering from a gunshot wound. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Upon further investigation, detectives concluded that a shooting occurred in the 1200 block of Q Street while Darius was being pushed in a stroller by his mother and her boyfriend. A car drove by and one of the occupants allegedly fired a gun, hitting the infant. A total of 3 shots were fired from the vehicle. Authorities did not know the motive, but believe it's possible that one of the parents was a target and the child was hit by accident. No one else was injured. Authorities say they're still canvassing the area for witnesses and video surveillance. No suspects have been identified, and the investigation's ongoing. The authorities are investigating a fatal shooting that occurred in Sanford, Florida. At around 11:20 p.m. on Friday, the 11th of November, a deputy patrolling the area of Coastline Park, located at 900 West 9th Street, found a vehicle backed into a parking spot which appeared to be running. When the officer checked the vehicle, a woman was found in the driver's seat dead from a gunshot wound. The woman's been identified as 18-year-old Kaylin Fingo. The authorities said it appears Kaylin went to the location with the intent to meet someone she knew, and that the matter appears to be an isolated incident. Kaylin's family says she leaves behind a 1-year-old son, and that she was expecting another child when she was killed. She was 12 weeks pregnant at the time. Kaylin's father, Ricky Fingo, said, "She was targeted. I believe she was. Deep down a feeling, I believe she was." Her son was staying with his father when she was killed. Sanford Police Chief Cecil Smith said, "This senseless type of violence is infuriating. Kaylin was a young mother who had her whole life ahead of her. This violence and destruction won't be tolerated in our community. I'm confident that our residents will work with us to find the person responsible for Kaylin's death. This homicide remains under investigation," he said.